let's go ahead and implement this really quick. We'll swap the exercise final for the exercise, get a bunch of error messages and stuff. You'd be surprised how hard it was for me to validate that you're doing things properly. You can check out the test later. But yeah, all of our work pretty much is going to live within this with toggle component. The funny thing about this function is it's called a higher order component, but it's neither a component nor is it higher order. It's a function that returns a component. So yeah, but that's what it's called, and so that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to create a component, and for us, we don't need any lifecycle hooks, so we'll just do a function component called wrapper. And the wrapper component is going to use our render prop. And now that we're using the provider pattern, we just want to access the toggle component that we're accessing, or that we're inside the context of. And so we're going to return toggle.consumer. And then this is going to accept our toggle utils, or whatever you want to call it. And it will render the component that it's given. So higher order components can be given any kind of argument. Often it's going to be given a component, but you could pass an object that configures a component. You could pass like anything and any number of arguments. There's nothing special about a higher order component passing just a component to render. So in our case, our wrapper is going to accept props, and because this is what, like when we come back here to subtitle, subtitle is actually the wrapper that we're going to return. And so when subtitle is rendered, it's going to be rendered with some props. And so we'll just forward that on to the underlying component. So part of the objective of a higher order component is to make it so that consumers of our of components that are created with this cannot tell that it is in fact a higher order component. It should behave as close to possible as the component that it's wrapping. So so that's why we're forwarding all the props on. We're also going to forward on a prop called toggle utils, and so in our case, our this.props.toggle.on, and it'll be able to tell because we're passing on the toggle. With React history, that's going to be this.props. With React router, that'll be this.props.match .history. And then React Redux, that'll be this.props.dispatch and that kind of thing. So very similar type of thing. So let's see. Yeah, so then we're also going to want to return the wrapper, and we'll save that and see what our tests say. So here we want to make sure we're using React forward ref and passing the ref property to the rendered component. So yeah, this one's kind of tricky and is only sometimes a real problem. But here where we're rendering this subtitle component, if we wanted to get a reference to the instance of that component, we would say, here's my ref instance, this dot I equals I, or whatever, to assign it, and then we can call methods on it, whatever else. And so part of the whole idea of the higher order components is to make the fact that it is a higher order component unobservable. And unfortunately, with the way that React works, this instance that it's going to be passed in the ref is actually going to be an instance of our wrapper, which is, in this case, that also doesn't work because it's a function component. So if this were like a React class, in any case, it's not going to be giving us the thing that we want. And so React recently released a nice new feature called, here, let's assign this wrapper to react.createRef. It's pretty handy. What you give react_createRef is a function, here we'll change this to an arrow function, that accepts props and a ref here, and then we'll say ref equals ref. And so it'll forward on the ref so that the fact that this is a higher order component wrapper is totally unobservable. You can use the ref as you would expect. And that was like a really, really serious frustration before createRef was around, because normally what you'd do is you'd say accept a like props.innerRef, and then people would have to use the innerRef prop. It's like super annoying. So yeah, that's no longer an issue. Great, so we'll save that. And I think I messed up this. Let me get rid of that ref. Okay, no, I didn't mess it up. There we go. Let's just move on. I'm pretty sure that's going to be something else. Okay, so we created our wrapper. We created the forward ref. Now in React DevTools, if we pop this open and go to React, if you don't have this installed, definitely get this installed. It's going to show us the components by their display name. And in our case, if we look at here, we'll look at the, oh man, well, it's busted, so we can't even look at it at the moment. But the display name that it's showing to us, like app right here and browser router and all that stuff, that's coming from a display name property that's on each one of these components. And so right now the display name property for this is actually undefined, so it'll say unknown. So what we could do is just say wrapper.displayName and give it something that's useful. So we'll say with toggle, that's pretty common to say like whatever the higher component is, and then whatever it's wrapping. So we'll say component.displayName or component.name. So display name is coming from React. If you're using Babel, it'll actually create that for you dynamically on the fly, which is pretty cool. If you're not, then or if it doesn't work or something, then name is just a regular JavaScript thing. That's the name of the function. And so that kind of helps with that. I think I like busted something because it should be. I'm using the wrong API. Create or forward ref. Nobody caught me. Just kidding. It's late, so, or it's been long. Okay, so now we need to do this silly thing. So this is like all these weird this is why people who implement higher order components don't like them, because it's like all these things you have to do to make it so that you can pretend that this component wrapper is actually the component that it's wrapping. So here's subtitle. And like I said, this is a little bit contrived, but this subtitle is actually like this class. We have a display name. We have these static properties. Display name is a React static property. That's fine. We're going to be rendering it anyway. But this emoji and this text are going to be referencing subtitle. So subtitle.emoji and subtitle.text. It's totally reasonable to expect to be able to do that. I'm just saying, hey, make me a component that's like this one. So the problem is that it's not like this one because it doesn't have all the same static properties. So while this component does have the emoji and the text, the wrapper does not. And so we need to hoist those properties onto the wrapper. Luckily for us, this is such an annoying problem that somebody wrote a module for us to use, so we don't have to do this ourselves. It's called hoist non-react statics, and we use it like this. Hoist them onto the wrapper from the component. And that gets our test passing. So there were like 4 other steps before forward ref and stuff came along, but still kind of annoying to implement these. That said, it does provide often a simpler alternative to render props in some cases, so I do recommend having it. I wouldn't create it before somebody asked for it, but I don't have any problem creating and exposing these in a library. It's pretty small. It's not hard to maintain. Yeah?
Could you just quick go over what hoist non-react statics is doing again? Sorry.
Sure, yeah, sure. So hoist non-react statics, down here, this subtitle is actually this wrapper. So we're creating this wrapper function. Yeah. And the subtitle does not have the static properties that this React class has. So we're defining static emoji and static text. But if you just were to look at this code, with the whole idea of higher order components in general, you might expect that I can use subtitle just like I would be able to use this component. And so that's why we say subtitle.emoji, subtitle.text. We should be able to, especially if we're exposing or exporting this, like often in Redux you'll do export like default connect my, or like your, whatever your map state to props and all that stuff. and then my component. And so you want whoever's importing this component, you want them to be able to treat that exported component just like they would the my component. And so that's what I'm kind of simulating that here in this contrived example. But yeah, in general, that's the purpose, is just to help make the fact that this is a higher order component or a wrapped component totally unobservable to the users.